Oh, a bright sunny day in greater Cincinnati. I mean, forget the fact that it's only 15. High at 23 today. And after getting close to a foot of snow, we are expecting, 3 to 5 more inches tomorrow? Why not? Winter Wonderland. Hello again, everybody. We welcome you to Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman, joined by Luke Brenneman, who's right here in Cincinnati. Luke, what's happening?
Nothing much. Happy to be back. I always love the Thursday shows, and this is a loaded Thursday. I mean, who's counting? But we only have a couple more football weekends left, and you guys have some ground to cover, especially in the pick'em. But there's a lot of high magnitude football this weekend, so I can't wait to jump into it.
Absolutely. And Casey, you've been spinning the dials with Kinner and the Buies.
That's right.
How's everything with you? You doing all right? You had enough of them, and you're already done with us, or what?
No. I'm ready for today's show. Last show, I spent most of it talking about how FC season's getting ready to start, Tom. The preseason's right around the corner. We got Media Day later today at 1:50. It's going to be an exciting season for FC Cincinnati. Are you excited as me, Tom? Pat Noonan going to get those guys ready?
Coach is our neighbor. Luke actually gave some golf lessons to his sons. And Luke thought he had screwed this deal up, right? And something was wrong. And I've been meaning to tell Luke, and I've totally forgotten, even though he's been home. I ran into Coach Noonan's wife at UDF about, during the holidays sometime. And I said, hey, how's everything? I know the season was a little bit of a disappointment. She says it was. Says, a lot of guys hurt, a lot of changes, blah, blah, blah. She said, by the way, our boys were crazy about your son, Luke. And I said, really? I said, I thought that, you didn't call after the first lesson or two and maybe something had gone wrong. She said, no. We were out of town. We love him. We'd love to get him next summer. So, Luke, there you go. You didn't do anything wrong.
I thought I royally screwed that up. I mean, when you give one singular golf lesson and you're offering package deals and you never even hear back, oh man, I thought I gave that kid like a hook mixed with the slice and everything that you could imagine. You're wrong, but hey, that's good news. That's a good way to start the show. I feel a little bit better about myself now.
You should, because they were crazy about you. Our show is presented by our friends at UDF and Encore Technologies. We come your way twice a week, live on Mondays at 9 a.m. on Chatterbox, and we post later in the day on the Believe Network. Thursdays, we come your way at high noon. You can find us on YouTube. Many of you, thousands of you, close to thousands of you already on board. That's YouTube/Chatterbox Sports page. And, of course, you can download us anytime, anywhere. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman, and you're dialed in. Now, look, if you're a football fan, and I think it's safe to say that every one of you watching this show right now or listening to this show is a football fan. Tonight begins 5 consecutive days of absolute nirvana. Now, I will agree. It would be better if the Bengals were still in the hunt and playing in the postseason, but it's old news. It's old news. Tonight begins 5 straight days of elimination football. There's nothing better than that. Elimination football. It starts in the college football playoff, the semis in Miami tonight. Notre Dame collides with Penn State. Though rich in history, neither has won a big game in seemingly forever. Notre Dame's last national championship was in 1988. You could double the age of most of our viewers right now. And it's been that long since Notre Dame won a national championship. Penn State almost as long. And yet they're football royalty. Kickoff at 7:30 tonight. Tomorrow night, and yes, it's to a lesser extent, but it's the same story. All the hype, all the build-up every single year for the mighty Ohio State Buckeyes. Their last national championship came under Urban Meyer in 2014. For Texas, the Longhorns have only played in one title game since 1970. And that was that thriller they won in 2005. Remember Vince Young against USC? arguably the greatest final game in the history of college football. On the pro side, you got a doubleheader on Saturday. LA Chargers at the Houston Texans. That's a 4:30 kick on CBS and at 8 on Prime. That's right, you got to pay for Prime. It's Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Third time they've met this year. The team split their first 2 games. Then on Sunday, you get a triple header. Denver at 2-seed Buffalo at 1 o'clock on CBS, 4:30 on Fox. Green Bay and Philadelphia. Then at 8 on NBC, Washington travels to Tampa Bay. Lastly, on Monday, Minnesota plays in LA against the Rams. It's starting to look like there's a very strong chance that game is going to be moved to Phoenix, Arizona, due to the tragic fires in greater Los Angeles. College basketball. UC will try and end a 3-game losing streak and win for the first time in Big 12 conference play when the Kansas Jayhawks come to town, Fifth Third Arena on Saturday. It's a 2 o'clock tip, and Xavier, they're playing just as poorly as UC, will play at DePaul at 4 o'clock on Saturday. All right, boys, let's start with Penn State, Notre Dame. Before we go any further, I want to ask each of you, and just answer which school. Who are you rooting for to win tonight?
I'm going to go with Notre Dame. Obviously, Mom went there, so a little bit of skin in the game, but I never really grew up an Irish fan. Going to some of those games, it kind of puts it into perspective. I love what Urban Meyer always says about Notre Dame. It takes a certain type of kid to go there. Obviously, the extreme religious ties, and also it's not very appealing in South Bend, Indiana. There's a certain kid that buys in, and I'm happy to see what Marcus Freeman is doing is really paying off. I think it's time and we're due for Notre Dame to hit the national scene and win a game of this magnitude. You can make the argument that they did it last week, but if they make the national championship game, I think that'd be really cool. That's why I'm pulling for ND tonight.
All right, Casey, who you pulling for? Well, I know who you're pulling for. It's a stupid question.
Yeah, Penn State. I grew up a Penn State fan. Notre Dame is more my adopted fandom over the last couple of years. I got to get one for my Nittany Lions. They've been kind of the laughingstock of the Big Ten for pretty much as long as I can remember. It would be really awesome for them to get this win. But I can't go wrong either way. I'm going to be happy regardless because one of my 2 teams is going to be in the finals. So I'm a happy camper regardless.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'm pulling for ND as well because there'll be peace around the Brenneman house. And I'm a big Marcus Freeman guy. Although I got to tell you, I really do admire the guts of James Franklin coming out and pretty much calling out Notre Dame about this independent status, which, look, if you're Notre Dame, I mean, why would you join a conference? Because that would involve sharing, right? I mean, we try to teach our kids how wonderful it is to share, and it is. And we should teach each other how wonderful it is to share. Notre Dame has never had any interest whatsoever, despite being a Catholic school, Christian school. They're not interested in sharing anything with anybody, ever. I mean, they've got their own TV deal with NBC to do their home games, right? They don't have to make a commitment, even though everybody has thought for years they would join the Big Ten. They refuse to do it. And you know why they refuse to do it? Besides sharing? Because they can't win the Big Ten. If Notre Dame played in the Big Ten, Notre Dame would be Penn State. Notre Dame would be Penn State. That's what they would be. I mean, they've played in 1 national championship game since 1988, one, and they got beat 1,000 basically to nothing by Alabama. And they've had some good teams. But they're not going to beat Ohio State, and they're not going to beat Michigan most years. This year, maybe they would have. And we're going to find out if they're good enough to beat Penn State tonight. But they have no interest whatsoever in joining a conference. And I admired the fact that James Franklin said, look, this is a joke. You know, everybody else has to compete in a conference and either try to get to your conference championship game or win your conference championship. And yet here you have Notre Dame. They can go through the course of a year, lose 1 game to Northern Illinois, And then, they're in the playoff. I think he's got a great point. But I'm rooting for him to win tonight. And let's talk about this game a little bit. Luke, you and I went to the Penn State-Boise State game. I am not a Drew Aller guy. Here's why, okay? You take away the Boise State game, and Boise State's not a Power 4 conference team. I don't care if they got a bye in the first round of the playoff, okay? Boise State would lose 3-4 games a year in the SEC and the Big Ten. We know that. That's a fact. They would lose at least that many games, okay? So I'm taking the 3-touchdown, no interception game out for Drew Aller. Now, maybe that's not fair, okay? But the other games this year he's played, okay? The Oregon game, people said he played good the Oregon game. Really? He hit 51% of his passes. Barely threw for over 220 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns, but he threw 2 picks. Against Ohio State, he was 12 for 20 for 146 yards. Okay? No touchdowns, 1 pick. For the year, this guy is only in the big games against top 10 teams. His completion percentage is right around 55%. That's not good enough to win national championships. Now, look, first 2 games of this playoff, they've caught a huge break in the scheduling. We know that. They got the game at home, and then they got to play Boise in the second game. So I'm not going to take away from the fact that they won both of those games. But I'm not a big Aller guy. And I think they're playing a very good Notre Dame defense, and I think the Irish defense takes it to them. Your thoughts, if any, on that, Luke?
I think when you look at the quarterback battle, it's kind of similar. Riley Leonard doesn't play in the Big Ten, so he doesn't have to go against Ohio State and kind of be put in jeopardy to put up numbers like those. But under 150 yards passing, that was something Drew Aller did against a Wisconsin team. Under 200 yards passing, that's something that Drew Aller did against a Maryland team when his offense scored 44 points. So he doesn't really make this offense go. From an athleticism perspective, I think he's very similar to Riley Leonard. He can pick up a 3rd and short with his legs, and he's going to put his shoulder into somebody's neck and make a big play. I think that's what's got them to this point. But I really do think that that's going to be the difference tonight. Both head coaches looking for a massive win as head coaches. For James Franklin, it's been forever. For Marcus Freeman, this could be the start of pretty much a legacy coaching run at Notre Dame if he can win tonight and make the national title this fast, kind of building up this program. And we know they're only going to get better through NIL with what you're talking about. So in Aller in specific, no, I'm not high on it at all. And we don't agree on much when it comes to football. But the ins and outs don't lie. Drew Aller was recruited out of Ohio, and it felt like a steal getting him to go to Penn State. It felt like he was the future of Big Ten quarterback play at that time. And Drew Aller just simply has not panned out. You can make the argument that, hey, it's a Drew Aller Penn State football team that's in the Final Four, so let's give them credit. But for both of these teams, Notre Dame and Penn State, they have massive quarterback names. Leonard was a huge pull out of Duke in the portal, and it's been their defenses that have gotten them to this point. So tonight, it's going to be the defenses, but that typically leads to what quarterback is going to make the 3rd down throw in the second half. What quarterback is going to tuck it and run on 4th and short and pick that up? So it's going to come down to those 2 guys. Who has the guts? Who has the talent to win the game? And as of right now, I'm leaning Riley Leonard just a little bit. And I think that Drew Aller's more talented, but it's just not really there right now for him.
Well, both of these teams play great defense. And so, they've got NFL players all over the field, both of these guys on the defensive side of the ball. And so, look, there have been some stories, how accurate they are. I'm not quite sure yet about some Penn State players coming down ill. There's so much stuff going on all over the country as far as people getting sick. There's a lot of different stuff going around right now. But Casey, how do you see this coming down?
Yeah, just to kind of give my thoughts on Drew, I think, most of the season he's been really tested because he hasn't really had the great outside threats. Tyler Warren is a great tight end, don't get me wrong, but a lot of his yardage, a lot of the receiving game has been a lot of contested throws and deep bombs to Harrison Wallace. And other than that, they really rely on their run game, Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. Those 2 guys get the ball rolling on offense, where Drew can then use play action, kind of roll out, and make stuff happen from there. The last two playoff games for Penn State, they've been able to run the ball very effectively.
Yeah.
And they've been able to play stout defense, be able to stifle run games, be able to create enough pressure with Abdul Carter and get to the quarterback to be able to make these games not even close. I don't think they're going to be able to do this game plan that they've been doing all season long against Notre Dame. And it's going to be a tough task for Drew Allard to even really throw against that secondary, to be honest with you. So they're going to have to attempt to get Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen going if they even want to have a chance in this game. And I just don't see that happening, to be honest with you. The only hope that they have, I think, is getting some mismatches with Tyler Warren, trying to attack that middle of the field, which I do think Drew can do. I just, in terms of who I think the better quarterback is, I do think it is Drew Allard. I don't think he's had the weapons to do it. And I don't think he's had the offensive scheme to really be able to air it out. He doesn't have the weapons that other teams do. But that's the same thing with Riley Leonard, in my opinion. I think they're both very similar teams. In terms of how they match up against each other, I would say that Penn State actually has the upper hand because, I mean, I think they have a more stout defensive line.
I agree with you.
And I think that they can get after the quarterback more. I think Notre Dame, they just lost a kid, one of their best defensive linemen for this game. I don't know if that was confirmed.
Yep.
Jacob's shaking his head that it was confirmed. So, yeah, I don't know. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a defensive bout. But I think Penn State has the guys to be able to get over the top. And kind of like what Luke said, he thinks that Riley Leonard's going to be able to make the play on third down, be able to run outside and pick up the big first down. In the playoffs alone, Drew Allard, you mentioned the stats earlier, Tom. In the Oregon game, he rushed for 54 yards and a touchdown against Oregon. That
but his
like
completion percentage is 50%. Against good teams. And look, Boise State's a good team. I don't want to take away from what Boise State did, but the two or three best defenses that he faced this year, his season percentage is 60-something%. But if you go look at the games against the best defense, he's in the very low 50s in terms of completion percentage and next to nothing as far as yards are concerned. I mean, against Ohio State on his home field, I mean, he couldn't do anything. Nothing. Now, you can say, well, not many people have done anything against Ohio State, period. And that would be true outside of the one game against Oregon early in the year out there in Eugene. But look, can Penn State win the game? Of course they can win the game. They've got an excellent defense. They've got an excellent run game. I'm not a gambler, as I say all the time. Luke, what's the over-under in that thing?
It was opened at 47. It has since moved to 45. So kind of what you would think with two defenses this good. We have it at 44.5. But, I mean, the spread's one. It's kind of a weird dynamic where I think a lot of people are favoring Notre Dame in this game. It's a coin flip game. It's a pick 'em. It's a 1.5 point window. These are two teams that are quite literally identical. They both have a duo of great running backs. They both have quarterbacks who don't have great numbers, that aren't going to throw for 350, but they're big guys who can run the ball. They don't have too many weapons on the outside, and their defense is full of future guys playing on Sundays. It's going to be such a fun game to watch because I think every single battle inside of the 10 yards chains for first down is a game on its own. That's how difficult I think these defenses are going to make it for each opposing quarterback.
All right, let's make our picks. We've broken this one down a little bit. Luke, let's start with you.
All right, so typically in games like this that are coin flip, I'm going to go, who is the better coach? I'm going to say Marcus Freeman. I really am. Who is the better quarterback?
Ooh.
I think Riley Leonard. Who is the better defense? I think it's Notre Dame. Give me the Irish in a tight one to go to the Natty.
Casey?
That's some really hard logic to argue with. I do think the coaching.
I think you could argue with Notre Dame has a better defense than Penn State. I think you can definitely argue for Penn State's defense.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that I do think Penn State has a better defense, and I think they have a better quarterback. But the coaching, I think you got me there. That is why I'm going with Penn State, though, because I think the players, they got to play. And if you're going to ask me who's got the better stars, it's Penn State. So, Tom, what are your thoughts?
Well, look, I just think that when it gets right down to it, I think that Freeman has something going there with his relationship with that team. It's a big hit with a loss on Notre Dame's defensive line, and it does concern me greatly. I'm having a hard time picking this one because Penn State can really run the ball, man. They can really run it. And if your best defensive lineman is not playing, that is a big advantage for Penn State. Having said that, I just got a feeling Notre Dame shows up. I'm taking the Fighting Irish to cover 1.5 and march on to the title game. Because either one of these teams, they get to the title game, they're going to get massacred by Ohio State. So let's go to that game. And, of course, Ohio State has to get there. I don't want to sit here and assume that just because they played so great, and you can't play better, basically, than they have played on offense, defense, even special teams, than they have played the 2 games of the playoff. They go 40-plus to blow out Tennessee. They go 40-plus to blow out Oregon. And now here we go. But we know, okay? We know Ohio State has a track record of all of a sudden looking like world beaters, and then what happens? Well, 2 things happened during their season this year. One, when their defense got humiliated in Oregon back in October, they went back to the total drawing board and revamped the whole thing. Since then, they have been basically one of the best defenses we have seen in the modern era of college football. They just absolutely overwhelmed Oregon. Oregon couldn't find its tail with both hands in that game on offense. And the other thing they did was, after the Michigan game, they go back and they look around and they say, what are we doing here? We're trying to, fit the proverbial, square peg into a round hole, right? Or round hole into a square peg, whatever it is, okay? And they said, why are we trying to run the ball 50 times a game? Let's throw it to set up the run instead of run it to set up the throw. And they've got the weapons everywhere. They got 2 NFL running backs. They got 2 first-round, maybe 3 first-round wide receivers. And their offensive line for the first time all year has looked legit despite 2 starters not being in there. So, Will Howard is the guy that makes this whole thing go. Texas is a weird team. When Quinn Ewers has got it going, he can make throws. Maybe that there's no other quarterback in college football, Dylan Gabriel, any of them can make, because Ewers has a better arm than Gabriel. And we know about Texas's defense, at least along the defensive front. And they've got a Thorpe Award winner in the secondary. So Texas has the players. Make no mistake about it. They have the players to try and match up with Ohio State. I just don't know how you slow down that Ohio State offense. And even if you do, fellas, slow them down a little bit. Arizona State, and we're talking about how great Texas's defense is, and that's all you hear about from other people. Arizona State ran the ball all over Texas. And then on the flip side, Ohio State's defense, what did they have? 5 sacks, 6 sacks, 7 sacks in that game against Oregon? Texas's offensive line allowed 7 sacks to Arizona State. That's not Ohio State's defensive line. So I don't know what to think of Texas. I really don't. I didn't think they deserved a 5 seed. The only top 10 teams they played all year long, they lost both of the games. And their draw in this tournament has been unspeakable. about what a break it has been for them. And now here they are tonight in a third straight game, and they're playing in their home state. I just can't see them hanging. And I hope I'm right. What do you think, Luke?
This is where I'm not with you here. I had Notre Dame versus
Okay.
Ohio State in my national championship the entire time, but I really don't like, for an Ohio State perspective, because I'm rooting for Ohio State tonight, how much people. I'm not going to say like you, because you did bring up just how strong Texas defense is. Texas is the second best team in this postseason. It is proven based on the metrics, I think. If you look at hypothetical odds and stuff, Texas is going to be over field goal favorites in against either team if they win against Ohio State. Ohio State is looking to be as big as 9 and 8 point favorites in whoever they will play if they win the game. So this is kind of a national championship in its own front, in my opinion. I'm not going to take away from Notre Dame and Penn State. They're going to give it everything they got, whoever makes it to the Natty next Monday. But in the sense of Texas OSU, this is not an underdog story for Texas. And I think that is very sad if they take that approach, because that's disappointing. This is the best, most hyped up Texas team we've seen in a really long time. They have a 5-star biggest quarterback recruit in recent history leading the way, and he's an experienced guy. They have a Thorpe Award winner on defense. They have Sark as their head coach. This is pretty much giant versus giant. I mean, this is the Longhorns versus the Buckeyes right here. This is as good as it gets. Just because Ohio State has looked this good, it should not be downplayed how fair of a matchup this can be. I think this is the two best defenses in the country. Personally, I would make the argument Notre Dame could be second, Texas third, because of the recency bias of Arizona State game. But you got to give Texas a little bit of slack here. They went up in that game, what was it, Dad? I mean, it was like 17-0 when they took that punt back. It is kind of difficult when you go up that early in a game of that magnitude to keep the same mentality. I mean, we saw at one point Ohio State let off the gas a little. Next thing you know, it's a 21-point game. It's not possible to play that good for 40 minutes. Then they totally collapsed, especially with their offensive line and giving up sacks and turnovers. But in that front, Texas has just as good of a defense as Ohio State throughout the course of the season. So this is a massive game for them, and they think they can win. So I'm not going to let just living in Ohio and being around the area swarmed of Ohio State fans that are super high on the Buckeyes for good reason sway me from that. This Texas team is ready for a matchup like this, and they've been begging for one ever since their 2 losses against Georgia.
And look, it should be noted that Quinn Ewers, as most people know, some may not, Quinn Ewers started his career at Ohio State. He was one of the most heavily recruited high school quarterback in the country coming out of high school. And he signed with the Buckeyes, and he realized he wasn't going to play. So he transferred to Texas, and that's been a great move for him, and he's a very respectful kid. He has never said a bad word, not one time, against Ohio State. And I don't mean this week. I mean ever since he left. And neither has Ohio State ever said anything bad about him. Casey, how do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Luke on the idea that these are the 2 best rosters in the college football playoff, and they're going at it tonight or tomorrow. And a lot of people think that Ohio State is going to roll, and I don't necessarily disagree. I don't know if I think that they're going to win by 21 or 28 points. I don't think it's anything like that. But when I look at the roster top to bottom, I just think I give the slight edge to Ohio State. I just don't think they have the secondary to be able to slow down these receivers for Ohio State. I think Jeremiah Smith is pretty much unstoppable. Emeka Egbuka, say what you want about him. He's a first-round product this season. And I look at their defensive line. I don't know if they can get after the quarterback enough to be able to make a difference, be able to stop it. And it also feels like, too, Ohio State has really just come into its own, being able to impose their will. I think they tried against Michigan, and they kind of started to figure it out. They've been imposing their will on these teams, and I think they're going to be able to do it against Texas. They just don't have a strong enough force to dominate one side or the other. They're good all around. They remind me a lot of Oregon, right, where they're really good just from all perspectives, right? But Ohio State is dominant at receiver. They are dominant at getting after the quarterback. That defense, fantastic. So when I look at it from that perspective, I think Ohio State has the upper edge here. I think the line here is sitting at like 5.5. That's what I got it
Yeah.
Now
here
it's a
on my.
6 on most legal books,
Yeah, now it's at
which
6,
is
which
interesting.
I think it's insane for it to be that high. Um, I think it's going to be another good game, to be honest with you. I just think Ohio State edges them out. Maybe 6 points is right about where I would have it. 2 field goals, 2 possessions. Seems like the max for me. But yeah, that's my thoughts, Tom.
I want you guys to explain something to me because I've said it many times before. I'm not a gambler, and I don't judge people that are gamblers. It's just something that I don't do, and I really have zero interest in whatsoever. Um, I I want you guys to explain something to me. I was looking up on the television screen a little bit earlier and saw this note. I think it was on ESPN that Ohio State's favored by, call it 5.5, 6, whatever it is. So up on the screen, it says Ohio State favored by 5.5, 6. Analytics gives Texas a 52% chance to win the game. Now, can somebody please explain that to me?
Yeah, so that analytic number, that's ESPN most likely. The system that they use to rank these games is really interesting. At one point, their rankings and projections had Indiana as the second best team in the country, and that was because if you look at the first 8 games that Indiana played, coming off that Nebraska win when they won 56-7, they're number one in like every category. They hadn't given up a touchdown in the first half all year. They were scoring 60 against everybody. It's pretty much just putting in place and plug numbers, and that's how they get to that point. So I guess statistically, Texas, I guess, has a 2% edge. The thing that I think about the line, because I read a lot about this and have followed lines for a long time, this hypothetical look ahead line for Texas Ohio State before the Arizona State game and before the Oregon game was 2.5. So that was saying Texas was going to win and Ohio State was going to win. But it was the way that Ohio State won that has really dragged and inflated this line to 6. I think what people don't realize is that special teams in college football is never talked about. Notre Dame has had one of the worst kickers the entire football season, and he has not missed in the college football playoff. Texas has had one of the best kickers in the entire college football, and he missed back-to-back kicks inside of 45 yards to send his team into the Final Four. Eventually, they made it on the walk-off touchdown. So when lines get all the way up to 6, it might seem big, but Ohio State isn't going to run their kicker out there from 52 when they can go for it on 4th and 4 with their offense. College football is much more high-powered offensively in the sense of touchdowns over field goals compared to the pro game. So I think that is why the line is, say, 6 instead of 4.5, where field goals would make more of a difference, but they won't. This is a touchdown game. Whoever can score in the red area is going to win in the Ohio State-Texas game.
All right. Well, Chase Wellman says a spread is like the stock market. It's all about how the public feels about the game.
Well, the public can change odds. For example, when Ohio State and Oregon opened up as like an even game, I think it opened as a 1-point spread for Ohio State. Obviously, the majority of the public is not people who study this or do this for more than 10, 15, 20 bucks. They're running to bet Oregon at plus money. Therefore, whatever you wager, you're going to make more back than that bet because they're an underdog. So for Oregon to be underdogs in a game out west against a team that they have already beaten, coming off an undefeated team where they're the overall 1 seed, you're kind of sitting there shaking your head like, this is free money. So therefore, people continue to bet Oregon, and for some reason, the line goes from Oregon as a 1-point underdog to 1.5. Now they're a 2.5-point underdog. At kickoff, they were a 3-point underdog. That was Vegas begging people to bet Oregon. Next thing you know, Ohio State wins that game by 30 points. So sometimes you get that type of dynamic where public money, especially in high market, where this game's going to have over 100 million bet on it tonight, they can definitely change lines, but that's not every single time.
All right, let's get to the picks for this one. Luke, we start with you.
All right, for Ohio State, Texas, I mean, I'm really riding out Ohio State, Notre Dame in the national championship, which scares me. Everything that I do to pick these games says that 5.5, 6 points is too many. So for the sake of this, I'm going to take the +6. I'm not rooting for it. I'm going to root for Ohio State, but it's too many points. Texas isn't 6 points worse than Ohio State from a roster perspective. I know the Buckeyes are playing unbeatable football right now, But this is kind of Texas's turn to play that villain role that Ohio State once played at the start of this whole playoff. Yes, we haven't looked good in our ranked matchups. Yes, everyone knows we still have stuff left in the tank. Well, it's time to show it tonight, Texas. So if they can cover 6, I'm pretty confident that they keep it within a touchdown. I think Ohio State's going to win this game by 3-4 if they win.
All right, Casey.
Luke, you wouldn't know what the public is on. Is it all on Ohio State? Do you know
It is. It's not all on it. I mean, in games like this, I think by 5.5, it's pretty 50-50. I think Ohio State's probably getting like 61% of the handle right now.
Somebody said in the chat that 81% of spread bets are on Ohio State -6. Chase did.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There's lots of different websites that kind of put all those numbers together. For me, I have it sitting that Ohio State has 70% of the money and 64% of the bets.
Yeah, 60%.
Yeah, so it's not at that range where I feel like I'm making a silly mistake by betting with the public, but it just feels like to me, like I said before when we were talking about this game, they have the better stars. Like they have the more dynamic, explosive position groups where Texas is just good overall. Like they have good players here. They have some good players there. They might have one of the better safety duos. I'll give them that. But Ohio State has the best receiving core in all of football. They might have the best defensive line in all of college football. So that being said, I just got to go with Ohio State here. And ride with the public here. Tom?
Okay. No, I'm going with Ohio State. I think they're the better team, and I think that their strengths play far better to the Texas weaknesses than vice versa. I think Ohio State gets after the quarterback. Ohio State's defense, and look, they might give up 80 on Friday. I have no idea. But their defense has just been so good. Sark's good coach, a really good offensive mind, but so is Chip Kelly. And so I'm taking the Buckeyes. All right, let's get to the pro game because we have a show long before whoever's playing in the championship game. We'll have a show to give our picks for that title game. So plenty of time for that. All right, let's get to the pro game. We're already at quarter till, so Luke, you want to get right into picks and spend a little time as we walk through them? What do you want to do?
Absolutely. We can dive into the NFL pick'em and then could be the move after to wrap up the show before the weekend.
Okay.
Chargers, Texans. The Texans, it never fails with this Saturday afternoon slot whenever they make the postseason. But this time they're at home, and they're finding themselves as a home underdog by 3 points in this one. So I think it's quite interesting. You got to give credit to Jim Harbaugh that he can quite literally turn around a team in less than a year, and now they're favored in the first round of the playoffs. So credit to him. I don't know. Like it just seems weird that the Texans would be 3-point underdogs at home. With C.J. Stroud being as good as he is, there's certainly no argument that the Texans have completely fallen off, whether it's injuries or skill level. They've just kind of died down. That sometimes happens through the course of how long these NFL seasons can be. But for some reason, I'm kind of leaning the Texans here. I don't know about you guys.
Casey, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sorry about that. Jacob's just giving me some breaking news about Abdul Carter being a official game time decision for Penn State. That's a really big deal.
That's a big deal.
His agent said you have to go out there and warm up and feel it. That's something that will happen in a couple hours. So that's a massive deal for Penn State. Sorry. Anyways, so you had Texas, right, Luke?
I do. I have the Texans.
I also feel like the Texans are pretty underrated right now. It's just a gut feeling. There's nothing that has really spoken to me that they've done recently. In fact, they've probably played pretty bad to finish up their season. But I don't know. I feel like the spread should be a little closer. I don't trust the Chargers and their organization one bit. I got to see John Harbaugh win a ball game first in the playoffs for me to finally get that kind of like monkey off your back. It's kind of like the Bengals winning their first playoff game against the Raiders. Until you see it happen, you kind of doubt it.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about this game. So I'm going to go with the Texans for that reason and that reason alone. Tom?
And what's the spread in this game?
3.
3.
Oh, there it is. Okay, I'm taking the Chargers. I think there's something missing here with the Texans. I mean, they went from a last place schedule, which they had last year, when they won all those games and put up all these big numbers. You know, Trout has only thrown for about 350 fewer yards this year than he did last year. His completion percentage is basically identical, right around 63%. But he has thrown more than double the amount of interceptions from a year ago and fewer touchdowns. Now, it's against a first-place schedule this year. So that's a big deal. I get it. But there's something missing with the Texans this year. I'm taking, look, big game. I kind of feel like the Texans, to me, and their history as a franchise is very similar to the Chargers. Chargers, at least in the history of their franchise, have been to a couple Super Bowls. The Texans, the only team the Texans have ever beaten in the playoffs that I can remember are the Bengals. So I'm going with the Chargers. I think Harbaugh, he'll have them ready to go, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball, and I think they're going to outright win the game. Forget cover. I think they're going to win.
Well, they're actually favored in that one, so they need to cover 3. But
okay.
Anyway,
all right. Yeah, you're right. You said they were favored. My bad.
Steelers and Ravens, the spread is 9.5. That's the biggest number we might see this entire playoffs. I mean, it's one team that seems like they've turned into world beaters again. The Ravens were once here, then they went all the way down. Now they're right back up. I think this is the third best team in football in Baltimore. They're really hard to beat at home. But 9.5 points, guys, where's the issue here? I think there's got to be some underlying issues within the National Football League if we're seeing 9.5-point windows in playoff games, and this is a divisional matchup. That is insane to me, and that makes me want to take the Ravens so bad. That the Ravens are probably the right pick. But if you don't, I just think it's crazy that they don't think Mike Tomlin can keep this game within 10 points. So for that reason, I mean, get my face off the screen. I'm in Paris to pick them, but I'm going to take the Steelers plus 9.5. That's just so many points for the National Football League. In college, it's nothing, but 9.5 in a playoff game, that's an issue.
Yeah, I agree with you, Luke. It is kind of like they're trying to bait the bettors to outthink themselves. That's why I'm going to take the Ravens. I'm going to be the fool, I guess, and outsmart myself here. The Ravens have just been on a tear, man. And I know that historically, these two teams, when they meet up, is a low-scoring defensive affair.
Yep.
But the Steelers are off, man. They're really off. Even though they kind of held it close to the Bengals, I feel like they just weren't really in it, and they're a little banged up too. I don't know. Something's not right here. I'm going to take the Ravens here and be the fool. Tom?
Well, I don't think you're a fool because I'm with you.
I don't think I think the Steelers is the fool pick. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Steelers, look, there are a lot of reasons that I can sit here and say, well, look at this team or look at that team. I mean, if you want to know really at the end of the day how bad the Bengals season was, just look at Pittsburgh being in the playoffs. Because for this team to come in on a 4-game losing streak, when is the last time has anybody ever read when the last time that happened was? That a team ended the regular season losing 4 in a row and still made the playoffs. That tells you how bad the Bengals and the Browns were this year. And save me the 9-8 stuff and 1-5 in a row and all that nonsense with the Bengals. They beat a bunch of crappy teams, and so what? The Steelers, they got a good defense, but they're gonna get hammered in this game. And I'm taking Baltimore. All right, what's next?
All right, another stinker. This one will probably be quick. I mean, it's the Broncos and the Bills in Buffalo, an eight and a
Why is
half
this
point
a
spread.
stinker? Why is this a stinker?
It's a complete stinker. I mean, an 8.5 point spread in the NFL postseason
This has a
where
chance to be a lot better game than the other game we just talked about.
oh that's where we disagree. See, that's where
The
I think the
Broncos can
Broncos
score, man. The Broncos can
the,
score, and the Bills have not been great on defense this year.
it's a rookie quarterback going into Buffalo in the
Okay.
playoffs. The Bills are
All
going to
right.
win this game by 28 points.
Okay.
An 8.5 point spread. The AFC is ugly to watch in the first rounds. I'm really not looking forward to either of these three games. Maybe Texans and the Chargers at least be a slugfest down the stretch. But the Bills are going to win this game by 3 touchdowns, I think.
Okay.
Yeah,
Casey?
I'm kind of with you. Tom, the Broncos put up what, 3 points? Maybe I don't quite remember against the Bengals in one half, and we know how the Bengals are defensively. They were only able to score 24 against the Bengals. So that being said, the Buffalo Bills are a much better team than the Bengals, and they're probably more dynamic offensively in terms of how much they have to cover, right? They have to be aware of Josh Allen running the football. And
yeah.
I like you said too, Luke, it's a rookie quarterback. I think Sean McDermott's going to have a pretty damn good plan to be able to stop a rookie. Give me Buffalo. You can, give me 21. I think they're going to just absolutely destroy them.
Okay.
They have the best running back in football that nobody
guys.
talks about either. They run the ball so well.
Okay, I'm going against you guys here. I think Bo Nix is a hell of a quarterback, and they have got a coach that has been down this road many, 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 many times before. I'm taking Denver, not to win necessarily, but not to get blown out of the gym. I'll take them in the points.
Okay. All right. Just seems like if they were to lose that game by 10, it'd feel like a win for them. Anyway, the Packers and the Eagles in the NFC. We'll do the Monday night game on Monday because we'll have our show then. So just 2 games in the NFC for Sunday. Packers v. Eagles. The spread's 4.5 in this one. Guys, if you've been watching the show, I know I'm the picks leader, but the Packers and especially this division of the NFC North has really had me kind of tied up in a knot. I took the Packers over the Lions. That didn't work. Then I took the Vikings over the Lions. That didn't work. Yep. And I kept riding out Jordan Love to have a massive breakout, hey, look at me, I have entered the scene type of moment. And that's what I'm going to bet on in this one. I'm going to take 4.5 with the Packers. And I think if the Packers are going to cover 4.5 in Philly, then they might as well just win the game while they're at it. Because it's going to take an unbelievable performance on the road against Jordan Love. It's going to take Josh Jacobs running for 4.5, 5 yards a carry. They're going to have to play a complete hour-long game to beat the Philadelphia Eagles at home in the postseason. And I've ridden it all year long. I'm waiting for Jordan Love to have one of those 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, Rodger-esque on the road performances in the playoffs. And if we get it on Sunday, that would be really special for the future of the NFC. So give me 4.5.
Luke, I've been back and forth on this game as well. I would have said if Jalen Hurts did not get hurt and was out for as long as he was, that this team would have been the odds-on favorite in the NFC to be the Super Bowl champs, because I think they were just on fire at the right time. The fact that he got hurt and he was out for 3 games kind of makes me feel like he might have a little rust. You know, it's a sneaky Packers team in terms of efficiency-wise. The Packers are in the top 7 on offense and top 7 on defense. They're really good and sneaky. And the first time that they played each other was week 1, right? Something like that. That was the Brazil game, and it was a close game. It came down right to the wire. I'm going to go with Packers too. I'm changing my mind. I think with the injury with Hurts, he's going to be a little rusty, and I think the Packers are a good football team. Tom?
I'm going with, without a doubt, with Philadelphia. They're at home, really tough place to play. Love threw all 11 of his interceptions in the first 8 games of the year. He's not thrown an interception in his last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games. But at the same time, his offensive numbers have been good. His completion percentage has not been very good at all. And I just think that Philadelphia pass rush is going to get to him. I still think Love's got to prove that he can really. I know he got his team, down the track in the playoffs last year, but to me, in games this year, the biggest of the biggest games, he's not been there for him. And I don't think that's going to happen in Philadelphia. Not in Philly. There's some other places I think maybe it happens. Not in Philly. I'm taking the Eagles.
All right. Well, that may be the marquee game this weekend. I think that Sunday night, though, is going to be really fun. You're getting Baker Mayfield versus Jaden Daniels, Sunday Night Football in Tampa, which is kind of turned into – I mean, Dad, you went down there all the time when you were doing those NFC games on Fox. Yeah. Well, what's that environment been like? Because it's kind of turned into what seems like a really raucous atmosphere on Sundays.
Well, they love their football down there in Tampa. They've always loved it. The problem is they had bad teams forever. I mean, really bad, really, really bad. And so, they win a Super Bowl there when Tony Dungy's down there. Then they go a long time where they stink. They start to build the thing back up a little bit. Jameis doesn't turn out the way everybody thought. They got to eventually bring in Bruce Arians. Here comes Tom Brady. They win a Super Bowl. And now Todd Bowles has them in the playoffs for the 5th straight year. I mean, they've got a nice thing going down there. You can say, well, they play in a crummy division or whatever it might be. That's fine. It's a highly competitive division every single year. No world beaters, but some decent teams, especially when they play one another. And so, I don't think it's one of the harder places in the league to win because generally the weather is very good. So, it's a lot harder to win in Philadelphia in January than it is to win in Tampa in January. What do you think? What are you picking? We got a couple minutes left in the show.
I think I'm just gonna rock with Baker. This seems like it's his year. He's officially back on the scene. He's been back, but the revival of a career from being called a bust to now in the last decade having one of the longest and most successful careers out of these bounce-back quarterbacks. He's the guy. He is a NFL starting quarterback. He's not a fill-in. He's not a backup. He's not a bust. At this point, he's had a heck of an NFL career. And I think this year is really going to summarize that for him. And it starts with a home playoff win on Sunday Night Football. I think their defense with Bowles, that mastermind as their head coach, can really scheme against a talented and great rookie quarterback. But the Buccaneers, I think, cover 3 and win this one just by like 4 to 6 points. It's going to be tight.
Okay. Case?
Yeah, I'm with you, Luke. The Buccaneers have actually beaten plenty of playoff teams. I was just looking at their schedule. They beat the Chargers, they beat the Eagles, they beat the Lions, and they beat the Commanders week 1. I can't say the same thing about the Commanders. The Commanders have not beaten a playoff team yet this year, except for the Eagles without Jalen Hurts, and it was a 36-33 ball game. I love Jaden Daniels. I said it, I think week 3 right after the Bengals lost to him that he was a dude, and I think he is a dude. I just don't think the rest of the team is quite ready yet. And I think when you're talking about Baker Mayfield and this high potent offense, they got Mike Evans back. I just think it's going to be too much for the Commanders to handle. So I'm going to go with the Buccaneers here. Give me -3. Tom?
Okay. I'm going against you guys on almost every one of these. So somebody's going to be really good and somebody's going to be really bad because I'm taking the Commanders. I just think Daniels is going to have a monster game, throwing it, running it. Boy, what a dynamic and exciting player he is. And to think only a rookie, my word, what a season. And I think the Commanders got it going on. So I'm going with the Commanders. All right, what's a move, Lukey? What's a move for the weekend?
I think the move's pretty straightforward this weekend. There's still about 1.5 feet of snow outside. I am sitting back, relaxing, and watching day after day of football before I go back to school Sunday. So this will be the last show in this beautiful setup with the Triple Crown winner over my left shoulder. But nonetheless, it's been a good run at home. I'm ready to get back to school, but a lot of football before then. So I think it's pretty much just watching these elimination games. I can't wait.
The best player you have over your left shoulder is not Jamar Chase. The best player you have over your left shoulder is Randy Johnson. Is that who that bobblehead is?
Yeah, it is. It's
yeah, that's
Randy.
the best player over your left shoulder. It ain't Jamar Chase.
Okay. Well, we can debate about that one when the show's over.
He said yes. All right, Casey, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very similar to Luke here. Just now kind of realizing we get football Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So it's just going to be football nonstop. And on top of that, we're getting more snow. So we're going to be trapped inside our houses anyway. So it's a perfect excuse to be able to crack a cold one open and sit on my couch all day watching football. Yeah, that's my plan. That's the move for me this weekend. Tom, what about you?
I want to thank Steve because the coach, he says that John Gruden was a coach when Tampa won its first Super Bowl. I thought that didn't Tony Dungy win one there too? Or did he get beat in the Super Bowl?
Tony Dungy winning a Super Bowl.
He did win. Yeah. It's McKay, Dungy, Gruden, Arians, and Bowles to win Super Bowl.
So,
no. It's Gruden. Gruden and Arians are the only one to win the Super Bowl. Those coaches took them to the playoffs. So it's just
that's
Gruden.
Why I say thank you very much. Thank you very much right there to Steve Ross. That's his win. It was Dungy got him there, did not win one. Gruden came in and won it. After he had gone to left the Raiders to come to Tampa. And it's good to see, by the way, that he's starting to get back in the limelight a little bit. Okay, look, the move is a no-brainer. You guys are right. Although, here's my problem. And it's actually probably a pretty good thing. I mean, make no mistake. I'd rather be watching, not even close. I'd rather be watching the Ohio State game with Luke tomorrow. And really with our daughter Ella, too, because she's totally into it. Watching Ohio State. I do get to watch the Notre Dame game tonight with all of them, but I got to get on a plane and go down to Florida tomorrow for a basketball game. So I'm going to end up watching the Ohio State game by myself tomorrow night. And maybe that's probably a good for others who potentially could be in the room.
It is good.
Yeah, it is good. So there we go. I'm going to be down there, and the game will be on. I got a basketball game, and then get back here Sunday. But by the time I get back Sunday, Ella and Luke will both be gone to college, which bums me out.
Tom, I got a little bit of breaking news. Zay Flowers will be out for this game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was just officially declared out.
Ooh. That's a big hit for Baltimore.
Yeah.
That guy's a good player.
Does that change your mind, Luke?
No, I'm still that helps me. I'm still on Pittsburgh. It's the ugliest pick. I honestly should watch a movie and hang out with my friends on Saturday night instead of watching that game because covering 9.5. I love what Chase said. He said it's going to come down to some kind of BS late game. They're down 17. They're going to score a touchdown, then they're going to elect to go for 2 for some reason, and it's going to come down to that. I think that's exactly how it's going to go. The Ravens will dominate them, but they'll somehow find a way to try and at least scare covering 10.5. I always give a pick of the week when it comes to my gamblers out there.
I was going to ask you that.
This one's for you. We're switching it up because it is kind of changing the tide. We picked all these games, so you know my picks there. Ohio State is going to cover against Oregon in college basketball tonight. I think the spread is 3 right now. They're going to have a really good game at home and get a big-time ranked win that boosts their resume. I like the Buckeyes at home in college basketball tonight. Wow. So a little bit of an appetizer before your football-loaded weekend starts up.
Everett Henry says, get it now, get it now, get it now. Okay, gentlemen, thank you. Have a great weekend. Thank all of you for being with us. Hope all of you have a great weekend. Try to stay warm. And if you can help others, people, animals, whatever it might be, stay warm, please do. Because, man, it is going to be a cold, snowy weekend. So God bless. We'll look forward to seeing you guys on Monday. And thanks for joining us. For Dialed In, we'll see you on Monday.